Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Real Lawyers podcast. It's good to be back, and I'm thrilled to sit down with today's guest, and I do mean thrilled. Before that, I'll mention that this broadcast is brought to you by Lexblog, the world's largest legal publishing network and a platform providing digital turnkey publishing solutions to lawyers, law firms, and legal professionals for over 20 years. Today's guest is Amy Shepard, and I'm honored to have her. She's an award-winning marketing strategist at Gladstone Growth Strategies, helping law firms use AI to boost business development. She's the former Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer at Ballard Spahr, now also runs Amy AI to show everyday users how AI can simplify work. Amy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, Kevin, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to join you. And I'm equally as thrilled as you are to be able to have this conversation today. So thanks for having me.
It very much is a conversation. You were at Ballard Spahr when they were already doing things around digital media and publishing. Tell me all about that. What's going on there? Who's doing what you saw working, what you saw that didn't make sense to you. Give me a little bit of feel about that in a large firm.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, I was lucky to be at a firm like that, and I had a terrific 12 years there. And we were lucky to have lawyers who were prescient in their adoption of digital media. I mean, Alan Kaplinski and his podcast and the Consumer Finance Monitor, his blog, really kind of set the stage for a lot of people and showed how you could be using different means and modes of communication to reach your audience. And so it was really terrific. From that platform, we were able to develop a really healthy, kind of digital media stack with blogs and additional podcasts and additional opportunities, expanded our programs into social, and really kind of doubled down on both our digital media strategy and our social strategy. And it worked. We grew our following on social. We had really successful, platforms that were identified as authoritative in the industry, not just for clients, but for other lawyers. So, and one of the, challenges is that there was a nice kind of easier pace, I think, than what we're experiencing right now, right? There was, tepid experimentation, then things started to really advance. Blogs, platforms like Lexblog really developed additional ways in which we could build out the offering and engage with our clients and those who are interested. And I think what we're seeing now, is a challenge of just speed. AI is happening so much faster than all of the prior digital marketing innovations that kind of were hitting the market. And it's just exploding. And so I think now the challenge is how to evolve those platforms and how to evolve. And look, Ballard was in a great place because we had interested lawyers. We had great topics and content that were focused, that we were able to build upon. And we really, people's interest in how they wanted to consume information changed, right? Now, all of a sudden, people weren't interested in scouring their inboxes and looking for the latest information. They were downloading podcasts that they could listen while they were doing other things, whether they were on the run, whether at the gym, whether on the sidelines of the soccer game. And so, we really needed to shift our strategy to not how we wanted to put it out there, but how clients and friends and colleagues wanted to consume information. And I think that that's a really hard thing to do because it's so personalized and there's no one way to get it done. It really depends on knowing your audience. And not just that, having a perspective that makes them want to tune in.
Yeah.
Some of that's driven by the news cycle. Some of it's driven by how it's delivered. But a lot of it's driven by really understanding, what your clients' needs are, what's keeping them up at night. In this constant state of volatility, every day there's a new issue that's being served up that feels like it's a once in a lifetime or we've never seen this before. So there's never been a better time to really kind of explore and to experiment with digital applications because the consumers are savvy, right? They know how they're out there testing and experimenting with these things. They see who's out there on these platforms, and early adopters really do have a first mover advantage.
Let me ask you a question. When you get to the AI things and, why you and what you're doing at Gladstone in that regard. But what I hear in what you've just talked about, going to like Alan and how all of a sudden, that publication is being, imagine your clients know that the publication is being read by the people on the administrative agency. They're going to be making the decisions that are affecting you. And so your lawyer's talking to them every day and influencing what they're doing. How did you get the culture going where the lawyers were excited to be doing this? Publishing and digital media in many firms is like is a hassle. Instead of finding the champions and running to the champion and supporting them with all their weird things that they might want to do, we want to get it down to some defined system that somebody picked up at a conference and brought back and said, this is how we have to do it. And the lawyers hate it. So then they just don't participate in it. So now we lose the passionate. How do you do it when you got all these eclectic personalities and you got this new thing called digital media? You have to have, an executive chair or managing partner that's looking at this saying, Amy, run with it. Do what you think is best. How did you work through all of that? Because it's not.
Well, I have to say, I mean, it helps having visionary lawyers, and all the credit goes to Alan and what his vision and understanding the opportunity that was in front of him. So I can take no credit for that, for sure. And he continues to be a force in that industry and continues to evolve and continues to look for ways to leverage new media to reach his clients and to continue to position the firm as an authority. I think that, that helps, right? Having someone that has vision, that's willing and has the formidable presence to be able to drive that kind of innovation. And when you have someone like that, other people see it, they see the success, they see the notoriety, they see the visibility, and they want to emulate that. And not everyone, you're right. It's not like you can knock on every door and say, hey, I'd like to put you on a podcast. And they say, absolutely, sign me up tomorrow. I wish it was that easy. I mean, it takes some cajoling, coming out of the pandemic and everything with COVID, we started the Better Business podcast, which was more of a generalized featuring different things. And it took some time to get people interested and invested and explaining to them why this is a good way for you to reach your audience. And I think that was really where I saw the shift when everyone's lifestyle changed coming out of COVID, when we were all working remotely, people were trying to look for ways to stay connected and be together. I think that was a real inflection point. And when we saw an explosion of growth in podcast materials and blogs and other means to reach people, because I think there was an awareness that people were prioritizing their time differently. They weren't working the same way they were working before. They needed things that fit into their lives. They weren't necessarily going to stay in the office for an extra hour to, read through the latest briefings on the latest developments. They wanted something that they could bring with them. And I think that that's really where I saw a lot more interest and a lot more momentum building, because everyone was looking for that way to stay connected. And then that's when we saw, discussions like this. I mean, even the proliferation in the legal marketing industry of not just lawyer focused content, but even within our industry, there weren't as many vehicles and podcasts and terrific Substacks and other things that you could turn to get information and feel connected to the ecosystem the way you can now. So it really starts with, you need to start somewhere. Having someone that has the vision, having someone that's willing to put themselves out there and take some risks, and then, really promoting it internally, showcasing that success, sharing the information, sharing the metrics, sharing the visibility of how the subscriber base was building. And then from that, we were able to launch other areas. I mean, obviously, when it comes to blogs and other things, as you've seen, the more specific you can be in your topic and the angle that you're covering is how you differentiate from everybody else. So it helps to have practices that align with that. And then individuals who are willing to put the time in to determine what that hook is and how they can present the information in a way that'll be meaningful, insightful, but also memorable.
Yeah, and one more question before I get to the AI. I think we've crossed paths, in the years that passed, but it was last week when I really, chatted with you and I read about your background, and it's very impressive. There's younger people that are intrigued by being in law firms that aren't there. There's younger people that are working in law firms that somehow feel frustrated that they're swallowed up in a system, and what do you tell someone today that, your career path would be a different path if it was started today, as far as all the things that would be presented, but you've achieved some really great things and done what you've wanted to do. What do you tell a young person today if they wanted to aspire to where you've gotten to? I'm just curious. I mean, so that they could look at it and say in a decade or 2 decades, I could be doing this. I'd be showing my kids what I'm doing. What would you tell them?
Well, I wish someone could tell me what's going to happen to me in the next 2 decades.
Yeah,
That would be
I
great.
wish so too.
I mean, I think that the mindset today is very different. I think that when we came up and the way we were raised and kind of the environment is, kind of put your head down, grind it out, be loyal, be invested, volunteer, speak up, take on responsibilities that are unknown and unfamiliar, where if you see a gap where you can help, offer that. I think today there's an expectation of kind of immediacy that, you're going to climb those rungs much faster. And, if I come in as an assistant, I'm going to be a coordinator in a year. And then in a year, I'm going to be a specialist. And in the conversations I always had and the mentoring relationships with staff that worked for me or that I was interviewing to come, it's you need to be realistic in the time it takes to really learn your craft. You have to learn the way it is and then look for ways to make it better. You have to be dialed in to what's happening in your firm and be a student of the business of law. You have to understand what drives success. You have to know who the clients are. Take the time to really look beyond the work that's in front of you to be able to identify places where you can have an impact and where you can bring your natural talents, skills, and abilities to solve problems. Being a problem solver is a lot of the work that we do in legal marketing at all levels, whether there are, problems that are created by the market, problems that clients are facing, problems internally with access to resources or prioritization. It's all about being nimble and being able to assess the situation, figure out how you can contribute, how you can get it to the next level. And I would say, a post not recently that seemed to really resonate about, people would ask me when I was hiring, what's the number one quality to succeed? And it really is resilience. Every idea is not going to get adopted. You're going to hear no more than you hear yes. If you present 10 new ideas, you'll be lucky if you get to move 2 of them forward. And the goal is that kind of iterative process of learning from each experience, figuring out what went right, what went wrong, and building upon it. And also recognizing that no doesn't mean no forever. It just might mean no for right now. And so kind of keeping that in your hip pocket. I can't tell you how many times I would spin up initiatives and ideas. And when I presented them, they didn't move forward, but it wasn't because they were bad. It wasn't because they didn't have all of the markings of success. It was that it wasn't the right time. And so you got to pick your moments. You have to look for ways to learn, look for ways to collaborate outside of your function. The more you can learn about the firm, right? If you're in the marketing business development team, get to know your colleagues in innovation, IT, project management, diversity, equity, inclusion, figure out what they're doing, what they're learning. And through that, you become a better student of how your firm operates, how things work together, and you're better informed to look for ways to make a difference because now you're bringing ideas that are not just one-sided or, from one dimension. And I think that's really the key to success. And luckily, I was at multiple firms over the course of my career where I had the opportunity to do that. And frankly, it was the collaboration across functions that I think really drove a great part of my success.
What a great story. What you just said about, being iterative and you might be sold no 8 times and 2, to let you in a little inside story. But when Amazon came up with the idea of AWS and cloud hosting, that was pretty unique and rare. And most of the companies and the developers in those companies wanted no part of that for all different types of security reasons. But there was a guy named Chassis that is now the CEO of Amazon that thought it was worthwhile, and so did Jeff Bezos. And they had a guy that came up with the concept of a blog, that if I blogged about what was going on in this area, we would connect to the developers. And so he presented it, and Jassy came back with a bunch of circles as to what the concern might be, and communications and marketing just said, no, how could we ever do anything like that? We got to go down the straight path of communications and marketing. It went on for a year, and the answers continue to be no, because Jassy was referring to the person in marketing. So he just put it up, this person, put the blog up, and came back into Jassy's office and said, this is what I did. And he goes, well, if that's all it is, that's great. Do that. Well, within I think a couple years after that, he was curious as to whether he should continue the blog. And someone that came to him said, well, of course you are. That is the number one revenue generator, the number one business development generator for AWS, which is now becoming the 3rd leading source of revenue for this entire company. So it was getting kicked down, kicked away, trying to figure out how to get it up. And finally it did. And look what AWS became for Amazon. Mm-hmm. Probably because of this one person, and Bezos is willing to turn him loose, and now the CEO changed. But going to AI, why you, Amy? You were probably not running around, Ballard Spahr, at some point in time saying, wait till machine learning and AI gets here. I'll have the answers for you then. When did the light go on? What did you see? Why you?
No, I started to see, towards, 2023, I started to hear more and more about AI, about applications. We were starting to hear more from vendors about the possibility of having AI powered systems and AI add-ons to the existing systems. And in particular, seeing how it was going to impact communications and client communications and business development. And at that time, it was really kind of like, we need to kind of keep our eyes on this. We need to make sure that we kind of have a sense for what's going on. And then everything just sort of started ratcheting up. Right. And so I really thought, I recognized that it's near impossible for any chief marketing officer in legal, let alone any other industry, to do the job to the fullest, extent that they can, and also keep their finger on the pulse of AI. It's moving way too fast. There's so much noise. And let's face it, we already know we're dealing with a skeptical base of lawyers within our firm. Doesn't matter what firm you're at. I mean, there are some firms that are very tech forward and like to be the tip of the spear, but I think we can agree that they are the minority, and that most of us, not only do we have to sell existing systems that have been around forever, like, for example, convincing lawyers why we need a functioning CRM system, right? That's still an argument that many of my, friends, peers, and colleagues across legal have, that argument every single day, let alone convincing them that this new thing that no one knows anything about is going to be important, and we need to think about how we're going to adopt what we're doing. And so I, had an opportunity to step away from Ballard at the end of April 2024, and decided that I was going to leverage this time to just immerse myself in AI and to seek the instruction and the learning from a multifaceted perspective, not just considering AI from a legal perspective, although I did some of that work too, generative AI in the legal profession and other things, but also just looking at it basically from broader marketing concepts and the impact that AI was having on marketing analytics, on strategy and leadership conversations, and how to really get trained to understand how to leverage these systems. And I'm at an intersection where I've had the space and the time that my peers don't have to focus, because every day when I was in the role, you're trying to run a team of almost 50 people. You've got 15 offices, you've got 700 lawyers, you've got the economy is serving up new practice opportunities every single day. We're trying to stay on top of client intelligence. We're onboarding, we're hiring, we're evaluating, we're trying to drive internal firm initiatives, all of those things. There's very little time for AI. So now I had the time. And so now what I'm able to do is marry my in the seat perspective with an incredible degree of empathy, understanding what my friends and colleagues are going through, and marry that with an understanding of how AI can help, not to replace your people, but to help you up service, right? Help you elevate the service culture within your team, help you deliver more faster, better intelligence at the right time, at the right spot for your lawyers and your firms, how to spot opportunities far off in the distance in a way we haven't been able to do before, and how to bring all this to bear to, improve workflows and ultimately create a better engine. There's so much that happens every day on a marketing team that just is noise and gets in the way or is repetitive. And it really, it holds people back because, the junior people on the team oftentimes get bogged down with a lot of that stuff. And so it keeps them from advancing and learning and growing. The teams are so big now and so stratified, right? We've had to create all these rungs and layers so that we can hold on to people longer, so that we have promotion and development paths for them, but we weren't necessarily creating space for them to learn and to think. And that's what really drives great marketing and business development, is space and time to think and to be, to consider all the variables, to consider what's going on with the clients, to invest in understanding who the clients are, understanding what drives the lawyers. I mean, let's face it, it's a psychological game. If you're trying to convince a lawyer who's been wildly successful why they should now, try a blog or start podcasting or change the entire approach to how they're communicating with their clients from a marketing perspective, you kind of have to bring the receipts. You're going to have to come with some solid examples and understanding of the platforms. Otherwise, you're going to be shushed away. And so, that knowledge and understanding married with the experiences is what I think differentiates me in the market and why I'm well positioned to provide that kind of guidance.
When you wrote recently that what AI can do, let's say in the case of lawyers, and it probably can happen in the case of business development team members, it provides them more space. It provides them more time because we're getting more done with less. It doesn't mean we want to get rid of people. It gives them that white space to think about. And you mentioned in the case of lawyers, you said they're going to need to build a network, especially when they're younger, when they still have that network and that connections together. They were throwing so much work to get done in so many hours to be able to build so much that there was no space for them to network and to build a name, build authority. Well, today there is, and we need to take advantage of that. It sounds like you're talking about something similar in business development too, but maybe address that whole concept of we're now enabling the smart people that have underlying passions to be able to tap into their passion and to bring that to the firm because of AI. Give me a little bit about all that, but I thought that was very cool when you wrote about that.
Sure. Well, I mean, look, we have a tech native, crop of associates who are coming up, right? These are folks that have had computers in their hands throughout their entire schooling history. I mean, I remember handwriting papers, or worse, typing them on a typewriter. I'm sure you do too, right? Blue books for our exams and such. None of that exists anymore. My son is in college and he's had a Chromebook since he was in elementary school that was given to him by the school. So now you've got this tech native, generation. And so they're already comfortable with technology. They're used to leveraging it to do things faster, make life easier. And so, the traditional path to partnership requires, you learn at the heel of the lawyers, you're right there shoulder to shoulder, you're doing all this work, you're doing the research, you're doing doc review, you're doing first drafts, you're, chasing down precedents, you're doing all of that. And look, the way the model works is you are beholden to those folks to help promote your career. And so you now have an opportunity where, a lot of that work can be done by AI. And so now there's an opportunity to think, what could we do with that time? Now, it definitely requires us to have to rethink the apprenticeship model, right? Because we recognize that clients are going to have expectations that if AI is available to dispense with some of these tasks, then they're going to want their lawyers to use it in a responsible way that creates efficiency, right? Because they're concerned about cost and efficiency. But I think that the smart way to think about it is, okay, great, let's leverage that for efficiency. And we have to rethink the apprenticeship model and how we're going to get the training and the skills built in these young lawyers so that they develop into the successful partners and rainmakers that we know they can be. But to your point about, there was never any space for business development and marketing. Everyone wanted to have marketing programs and training and business development training for the associates, but we would put those programs on and half of them wouldn't turn up. Not because they weren't interested, but because they were bogged down and they knew that the client work and the work they were doing for their partners was most important. So who can blame them, right? If their fortunes are served by serving the partners and the clients, why are they going to make time for non-billable activity in the form of business development training? And then we would have to try to catch up with them on the fly, or they would getting the recordings. And, recordings are great, but let's face it, it's not the same as participating in real time.
No kidding.
So now we have the opportunity to really capture their attention in a way and help them invest in their own networks, as you said earlier in their careers. They all have this network of people that they went to college with, and, fraternity brothers, sorority sisters, people that they went to law school with, people that they were on the law review with, right? People they did moot courts with, places where they were summer associates together at firms. And oftentimes they get so busy building, they're at their new firm, they're getting onboarded. All of those connections start to fade over time. But now we can leverage AI to give them tools and strategies to be able to keep in touch with that network and activate it sooner. You don't have to wait to be a partner to create pipelines of business development opportunity. You can be a connector. You can provide support. You can get them to the right people. And lo and behold, you can have someone who's coming down that partnership track, not starting to think about business development in the 7th or 8th year or beyond, or moving from a senior associate to a counsel position or a non-equity partner position until they build up the book. We should be incentivizing associates to be developing those books from day one and to think about understand how they can take what's happening at their firms and bring that to their networks. Whether it's, it's even as simple as every person you encounter, if you're on the sidelines at your kid's soccer game or you're at your church or synagogue on Sunday, every one of those people has a job. And every one of those companies that they work at has a legal problem. It's just figuring out what the connection is and what the landscape looks like and how many steps away you're from that. And the answer may be, just like where the exits are on an airplane, it may be closer than you think.
Yeah.
It may be behind you and not in front of you. And so I think that we can leverage, and these tools now are so robust and create opportunities to stay in touch with clients, to stay on top of client developments and needs, to stay on top of regulatory changes and decisions that have real impacts that they could be serving up, not just to help themselves, but to help their peers who are also at junior levels in their own firms or companies, help them advance. So it creates a much better symbiotic relationship where you can be helping each other sooner along to develop a pipeline that's going to pay off longer.
Yeah, and have the managing partner stop you in the hallway and say, thanks for what you're doing. I really appreciate it. And you've only been there like a year or something, and the other associates can't figure out, well, how the hell that happened.
Exactly.
From a selfish standpoint, and it's just from being a lawyer for 17 years and not having a publication, knock on my door and say, we'd like you to publish on whatever you're passionate about or that type of thing. I think I wrote one chapter for Matthew Bender on the use of learned treatises in trial. I was passionate about that, but that's the only time it ever happened. I was attracted to starting Lexblog because it democratized publishing for lawyers that had a passion and a niche. And somehow I could see it when everybody thought it was the craziest thing in the world. When I hear you talk about those young lawyers and when they maybe meet somebody at the synagogue or whatever, and they talk, that person will go look at who this person is that they just met, that lawyer. And I always looked at it as intriguing that they would go and find that this person publishes on some ultra niche or some niche, and they're intrigued by it. Just they're new, they're a different cat. They went out and published, and they'll remember the niche that they may have been in. What do you see of the role of, let's say, becoming a thought leader? Whether, long form publishing, short form, it could be using TikTok. What do you see as that being a role? One thing that you do.
Well, I mean, obviously, you have to find the thing that you're passionate about, right? And to find the thing that resonates. I think authenticity is a key marker today. People can tell when you're just skimming the surface, right? And I think that, look, it's hard. We all have so many demands on our time now. The kind of culture of now that our offices are in our homes and there's no separation between church and state in terms of this is the time when I'm working and this is the time when I'm not. So, to the extent that you can look for intersections of the things that fill out your life, right? So whether it's looking at, I see such great content from lawyers, from other business development professionals, from consultants, where they marry their passions and they take a tact on something. Like, for example, they're really into sports and fitness. And so they look for ways to kind of draw parallels that draws other people in who have that same interest, or they look at experiences that they know are shared experiences, things that it's, what it's like to be a parent, what it's a working parent, what it's like to go through loss, what it's like to deal with uncertainty, and looking through that lens and then applying it to where their expertise lies. And I think that that's really where, the magic can happen, when you can marry where you have a deep subject matter expertise, but take a perspective that's widely applicable and interesting. And then I think that you can kind of build an audience out of that. Everyone can talk about, regulations and developments from, the factual perspective. I can get that from 100 different places. So that's why people prefer certain celebrities or personalities or news channels, right? They like the way it's delivered. They like the perspective. They like what they bring to it. And while most of that is generally pretty canned, right? I think we can find that in, talking heads going from place to place. I think there are now platforms, whether it be LinkedIn, X. I think Substack has been amazing to create a universe of content that is so rich and so deep and formed from so many other perspectives. I find that there's more content out there that I find interesting than I possibly have time to consume. And so I'm constantly saving and forwarding and pushing it over here. It's like, let me text this to myself because then I can read it when I'm doing this over here. Let me push this over here. I think that's the biggest challenge for everyone, is just content overload.
You can be but you can be that one person. So if I'm writing on equine law in one slice of it, I might be the only one. You might find that you could be the only person writing on probate litigation in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, because you probably would be. So I was thinking about it from that perspective. You have taken the initiative with Guy Alvarez to begin to survey law firms, to be able to put together data on where you see gaps, how do you help firms, is who's doing what in AI. And one of the things that you guys are doing uniquely, I was at in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and it was put on by the Legal Tech Hub, and they had 600 solutions relating to AI that have been developed and funded in the last 2 years. And I looked up at all these and I looked at the flows. None of it had to do with business development. All of it had to do with the zero-sum game. How do we get done more with less? And if we reduce the expenses enough, we'll be make more money. You guys took a different tact at this. How did the idea of the survey come about, and what are you doing? What are your early findings?
No, I mean, as I continue to move down this path, one of the things that's always challenging, particularly in legal marketing, is benchmarking. It's really, really difficult to get a good read on what is actually happening, cutting through the noise to the reality. And so I knew I was always asking around, right, when I was a CMO. Does anybody have any information on this? Do you have any benchmarks? We would get some of the more global reports that are put out by Wells and Citi and Thomson Reuters, but they generally didn't necessarily pertain exactly to what we were trying to solve for. Or there was not enough consistency in the way the questions were asked that you could really draw the conclusions as it relates to marketing and business development. So I started to develop the survey, and then Guy and I kind of hooked up. And obviously, I was a big consumer of his social media index for Good to Be Social. So, he started it for the same reason. And so with his interest and passion for AI, along with my own, both with our shared perspectives on different sides, it just seemed like a natural thing to partner together on the survey, because we would naturally see it from different perspectives, all of which would be valuable. And so, and what we expected is what happened. People were really interested in getting this information. It is really difficult to cut through the noise and the hype to what's really happening. There's a proliferation, as you said, of tools that are focused on the practice of law, right? What's being done to serve clients. And there are emerging tools, new tools that are being spun up that are fantastic, that are focused on marketing and business development. And so we wanted to see, who's using what. How has AI kind of made its way into the function? Where are people having success? Where are people feeling challenged? And the good news coming out of that, we're getting ready to publish the report, should be out in the next couple of weeks as we digest and kind of, present the information. But, the big headline is that nobody is necessarily running ahead. There are a few firms who really have always had a tech forward position, who have the resources and the support and the infrastructure to really invest in these things. But for the most part, heavy focus, everyone's focused on the governance side of it, which is important. Obviously, lawyers are risk averse. AI has a lot of risks to it. Understanding those risks and responsible AI use is critical. And so, not surprising, there is a lot of advancement in terms of governance, but not necessarily as much with playing with the tools. You're really leveraging the tools, building unique, using agentic workflows to improve manual processes to free people up. So the good news is untapped, potential. And everyone is kind of learning at the same time. So for those people that feel like they're being left behind in the dust, take a deep breath and know you're not. Everybody's kind of, like you see in most traditional bell curves, right? There's a whole big group in the middle. You have some who have not even looked at it, some who are already 2 miles ahead of you. But for the most part, everyone's kind of centralized. And I think that, there are definitely some trends and opportunities that I think are low-hanging fruit that are going to come out of the survey results where, they're not risky opportunities that are going to create a lot of upheaval. I think it's just about rethinking what's possible and also investing in basic AI literacy. See a lot of firms separate and apart from the survey, just in my conversations with firms of all sizes, there is a focus on, oh, well, this tool, we'll get this tool. We got this tool. So let's just, everybody has it. So we're doing AI. And the problem is they're not seeing the adoption that they're looking for because they kind of miss the step of investing in basic AI literacy. If people understand how AI works, forget about the legal application or the application within the business of law. You need to understand what these tools can do and how to use them responsibly and kind of understanding what makes them go, how you can get more out of them as a baseline before you then apply it to these legal specific tools, whether it be for marketing and business development or client service or whatever. And so to me, that's the big glaring misstep. I think that, kind of jumping into tools, a lot of the big vendors have now AI application bolt-ons that they want your firms to be excited about. They're amending their contracts so you can buy those too. And firms are feeling good about those investments. But then the undercurrent is, someone without training and understanding tried the tool. It didn't perform the way they thought it would. So now the tool is worthless. And that's not the case. And we see that all the time when there's an intersection between lawyers and technology. Same thing is true. I mean, we're human beings, right? Every human has, the same. Some of us are real great at navigating tech applications and we get it in an instant. Some of us need more time. Then there's the different ways people learn, right? Some people can watch a video, take it in, and then immediately apply that. Other people need one-on-one instruction and someone to walk them through. And most importantly, people need room to feel like they can make mistakes, right? And the legal environment is one that does not tolerate mistakes. And so when you've worked real hard to build trust and credibility, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's willing to hang that out there to get blown to smithereens by making a mistake on an AI application. No thanks. I'll keep doing it the way I know how to do it, where I know the results are predictable and I know exactly what I'm going to get, even though leveraging it could potentially give you an even bigger impact, a better outcome, and get you 10 times further faster.
Yeah, it's really, multiple times you've talked about, being resilient and trying things that maybe will be pushed back or whatever. I mean, the early days of Microsoft, people would be giving Bill Gates ideas, and, his response that I had heard at times was, did you ever get to the second minute thinking this through or something? Amy, one thing I wanted to ask you selfishly, you've kind of seen Lexbog around for a while. What can we do to help on the AI side? Or what should we be thinking about as to how we could help firms? We showed you a sneak glimpse of Compass that can score publishing and whatnot. I talked to you about the library that we're going to start to have, so the content doesn't go away after 6 years, or different marketing solutions and whatnot. What could we be uniquely qualified? I'm getting the good fortune to sit and ask somebody that's a consultant at Gladstone, a very credible corporation, and somebody knows AI very well, and trying to throw up a freebie that we'll talk about later. But I'm just curious what comes in off the top of your head.
No, I mean, I think what you're doing with Compass, and again, I have the benefit of kind of a sneak peek. I mean, I think, it is challenging in terms of thought leadership. You have lawyers that are really great at thought leadership. They want to have all of that featured on the website, on their bios. And next thing you know, you go to include their bio or share it with someone, and it is 15 pages because they've been publishing voraciously and speaking on they are absolutely a thought leader. Nobody wants a bio with 17 pages and publications and speaking engagements that go back to the 1990s. And so I think what you're doing by trying to curate that content and give it a home and a place to live so that it is reportable and citable and findable is, I think, critical, because it allows the marketers. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations we used to have with, trying to convince people why we couldn't have all of their content ever on the website. It doesn't make any sense. It affects, site performance. It's not what clients are looking for. It's just taking up space. But at the same time, they feel really invested. And the other piece too, I think, is Lexbog is positioned now to help, hold on to that thought leadership as people move around. I mean, let's face it, the lateral market has never been hotter, not just at the partner ranks, but the associates as well. People are constantly moving. And so when they move from one firm to the next, you only want to talk about, well, what they've done at that firm. But if you've taken the time to build up content and create a credible position where you're looked at as an authority, the opportunity to have that live someplace where you don't lose it just because you left one firm and went to another. Because the minute the partner announces they're leaving or they're gone, that website bio is gone. And then even if you can get the, kind of screenshot of what it looked like before they left, that's great. But it's not going to give you the access to the content, which is now, never to be seen again. You're dead to us. That doesn't count. You did that over here. And so I think what you're doing and the way you're evolving the platform to not just be a publishing platform for blogs, but also a content hub and a robust accumulation of so much great thought leadership and content that may get overlooked simply because it's aged. But it doesn't mean, look, we're still reading the classics today, right? People aren't reading, people are still reading Dante. People are still reading, things that were written hundreds and hundreds of years ago are still relevant. And some of that legal thought leadership, it still holds its ground. And so having a place where that can be accessed and searchable and surfaced in moments where it makes sense, or to help position you on a specific issue when you are going after a new opportunity, when, there's a cycle where, something that maybe fell out of favor or wasn't as interesting, or wasn't top of mind right now, but 10 years ago it was, and it resurfaces. Now you can get right back to that and position yourself, not just with the thought leadership you're doing right now, but that body of work so
Yeah.
that you can demonstrate that you're an authority that has been honed over time and not just somebody on the street who decided to talk about this today.
I mean, none of us know exactly what AI is going to do or not do. And it moves so fast. I mean, just watching yesterday, I noticed that, or somebody tells me the day before that runs our products, they said, Google AI is on. And I said, it's on. And I said, I bet Colin this summer it would be on the front page of Google, that there would be a conversation, and he might have more money in his pocket than me, so I didn't bet him. And it's not all the way on, but it's the first option now that you can choose in the middle of the page if you want to go over to Google AI in your search. Then OpenAI or ChatGPT turns around the same day and says, do you want to just add to the toolbar at Chrome? I mean, your searches, it's like touche. So it's like a fast moving world. It's going by in 24 hours. In the back of my mind, I see AI as being able to sift through all the static and start to see who are the authorities, who is the leading scientist on this type of thing. And I'm going to look at what they publish a little bit more critically. And so when I'm giving answers to the public that have prompted, or whatever, it might even be prompts, it might be just presenting the information to me unilaterally, I'm going to provide sources that make the information more credible as to what I just said. Just like a lawyer does. I go to the judge, I make my case, and I provide the sources that are authority. AI operates the same way. How do you see libraries and this body of authority, let's say, that this lawyer has published for 15 years on this playing out in an AI world, whether it's in proprietary machines or in open environments like Gemini or ChatGPT? I'm just curious because you've been digging around AI for a while now and you have some opinions as to where it may go. What do you see?
Well, I mean, I think the important thing is it has to be discoverable, right? And I think that's what you're creating, a platform where that makes that possible, right? If I take something down off the site, all these years of thought leadership, if you've got someone who's been a partner at a firm for 20 years and they really are an authority in their area, the content doesn't, live on the website forever, right? We have to keep it fresh. We only go back 2 or 3 years. And so, for AI to surface it, it has to be someplace that's accessible. And for many lawyers, right, that's their firm websites or whatever firm they happen to be at. They don't have a separate platform that's cataloging all of their thought leadership and all of their information. And let's face it, some of that thought leadership wasn't digital. Back in the day where you actually had to write like a paper article that appeared in the news. Remember, we used to have clippings, right?
Yes.
We used to have, clipping services that would send us, the pieces of the articles. I mean, think about, yes, there is this enormous body of knowledge. And to a certain extent, depending on where the information was, other things have been digitized, right? Like I could go and look for an obituary for someone who passed away in, 1985 because the records have been digitized and I can find that, right? But that's not necessarily how it works with thought leadership. If your thought leadership was in a huge publication like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, chances are they've digitized their archives, right? But if it just appeared in, Today's Lawyer or, the Texas Gazette, you may not have the same access. So I think it's important when you're trying to build that. I mean, I agree with you. I don't know where AI is going. But I do know that the more we can build content hubs that are digitized and find way to store things so that it is accessible and scannable and findable by these LLMs, I think then you have a chance to kind of surface and be part of building that topical authority. I wouldn't venture to guess on what it's going to, I mean, I can't believe the ground that we've covered. I mean, think about a year ago, images coming out of AI were terrible. People had 3 hands, they had 2 heads. You'd see a random, appendage in the background and, the words are now it is producing, movie quality video in some cases that, and the issue of deep fakes and other things. And that's the other piece. This is creating a whole new set of issues as it relates to digital assets, with voice cloning and deep fakes. I mean, you can record an entire podcast like this through AI with simply a snippet of your voice and my voice and tell it what you wanted to talk about. It could record the whole thing, so is it real or is it Memorex, right? This is, we are in a very weird time. And so I think it's important to think about where and how you're publishing. I think it's important for firms to think about how they're going to digitize their content libraries and all the information that they've amassed. I think platforms like what you're building are going to be critical to that because you're going to have a place where all of this will live. And it has the chance then to be surfaced as research, as guidance, and to really help people build that authority because it's only as good as what AI can surface. And so if you don't have it that way, then it's not going to go as far. Now, look, if you came up and you built your practice before the digital age, you've probably already got that credibility baked in. But if you're a new lawyer starting out, or you're a lawyer that's mid-generation like me at Gen X, where, you're half digital, half not, then I think it really behooves you to think about, how can I get access to that? How can I make sure that that's findable? So I am positioned as an expert.
And it's got to be tough. I'm just guessing. I have no idea how the machines look and think and whatever, and they're teaching themselves based on what they're programmed to look at. But a law firm website is deep in what it should be. This is our prowess. This is our experience. This is where we have deep expertise in subjects. Here's the profiles of the people that we have here. Here's the type of matters that they've worked on. Here's a press room for various things that we brought into the firm. Here's the type of matters that we've been working on between this government or this government and that type of stuff. It's a giant marketing and communications machine, as it should be. I mean, there wasn't websites when I was practicing law, but to put publishing behind the marketing and communication side and the profiles and everything with it seems to be hard to then determine what this is all about. Is it thought leadership or is it marketing and communications? It seems to cloud the signal. That's just me looking at it. To get that out into publications like Alan's done, let's use him as an example. He's built huge credibility because there's no wall to look around to see if this is credible or not. I mean, I don't know if you think about stuff like I think about that maybe because I'm trying to figure out this library thing. I don't know whether I'm even making sense.
No, I know. I think what you're getting at is, look, one of the challenges in this digital world is anyone can publish anything. Add to that the fact that, let's say they decide they're going to publish about something they're not really knowledgeable about. They leverage AI. AI hallucinates, gives them something that sounds pretty reasonable, but they're not familiar enough to know that it's completely fabricated. And now all of a sudden, you've got not authoritative content commingling with the real experts, and you leave the public, the clients or whomever is reading it, to figure out what's real and what's not. And I think that's really a challenge. I do think that at the end of the day, thought leadership is a business development engine, right? It's about marketing visibility. It's about being out there. And so it's necessary. And a lot of lawyers don't have time. They struggle to get all of the stuff done that they need to get done for their clients. There have never been more administrative burdens on lawyers than there are today. They're expected to participate in the business of the firm in a very different way. They have a lot more responsibilities that they didn't count on having. And so the idea of then carving out time for non-billable work, time to do thought leadership when they've got to get their bills out, they've got to make sure they get the client work done, they've got to sign off on their associates' work, they've got to do all these other things. It's really tough. And so, it's important that we hold out that if they do invest the time. But AI is a game changer now. One of the things that's always tough when you ask a lawyer to do thought leadership is to kind of look at the screen and develop it in whole cloth. AI now allows you to summarize the issues, to give them a running start, to give them something to shoot at that's not intended to replace their voice, but gives them something that they can then hone into their voice. And that's the other thing it's hard for lawyers to do, is to develop a distinctive voice, right? Every time there's a Supreme Court decision or a regulation change, every firm is talking about the same issue. And it really is, it's a fight to be the top of the inbox, right? But if you can, and that's what Alan did, right? He was able to create a very definitive voice in all the noise that was credible, authoritative. It was built on, his years of being a trailblazer and being front and center. And to your point, he was not just a resource for the clients and other lawyers at the firm. He was a resource for the people he was writing about, the regulators that he was, so I think it's a vastly different mindset that we need to adopt when it comes to the positioning of thought leadership and the cataloging and really focusing on, and you talked about the websites, oftentimes they're reflective of how the firm is organized, at not necessarily how clients think and what they're really concerned about. And I think the natural language ability of AI is really finally, as marketers and business development drivers, we've been having these conversations with our firms for years and losing. Some firms have gracefully made the change, many have not. But I think that the natural language ability of AI is going to force everyone to rethink their content and to write in a way that thinks like their clients. And I think what we're going to see is a much higher quality of responsive sites that get to the heart of what lawyers can really do for their clients and how to differentiate themselves in a very crowded field. It's so incredibly competitive.
Yeah, I think that's right. And when they're spending that that hour and a half to write that article, let's get it in a place which is going to cast authority. It might just be, your firm might be one place to have it next to your buyer and whatnot, but if it's in the world's largest legal library and only allows credible information in, so it's not letting the spam AI in, sends a lot of signals back to AI that you might just be an authority on this subject. And you're there with
100%.
the other authorities and the fact that you're speaking and all of that that comes with it. Amy, it's been great. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for the next 2 hours and learn a heck of a lot. Last thing I just want to ask you, what's Gladstone all about? What attracted you to join the folks at Gladstone, the people there?
Sure. Gladstone is terrific. And I was fortunate enough I was involved with them. They put on really terrific roundtables for different functions across the legal marketing ecosystem. So there's a chief marketing officer roundtable. We have one for marketing and business development directors. We have one for comms and PR, and actually just launched one for operations that's kicking off. And so what really drew me to Gladstone, I was a participant in those conversations. It was different experience than other roundtables and other forums that I had been in. The way the content is curated, how they guided the discussion, it was really a help. It wasn't a sell. It was really, Gladstone was incredibly invested in allowing us to lean on each other and to learn from one another in a way I hadn't experienced before. So I enjoyed, being connected that way. I had an opportunity where I needed some staffing assistance, some fractional help. And so when I was at Ballard, I brought them in to help do that. My colleague Jay Wager came in and helped us for quite some time, fill some gaps that we had. And then when I, left Ballard, I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. And certainly I could go solo. There was lots of other opportunities, but I really was drawn to Gladstone because of the way that they, the ethos that connects all of us, the way they look to help. It is not a hard sell. The ability to build the AI platform, right? So I've built the Gladstone AI advisory, the support and the interest from Craig and others. I mean, it really just is, it's something special and it's something different. And at every stage across my career, I've looked for organizations I could join that were something special, something different, and Gladstone fit the bill. And so I really enjoy, working with the other consultants. Each of them has a depth of knowledge in what they do. We all bring a slightly different lens and a different vein of experience, and it's really collaborative. And that just works for me. I like to be connected to authentic people who want to help and who like to collaborate. And Gladstone hits on all levels. So it's been an absolute pleasure to build the Gladstone AI advisory and to be part of them. And I look forward to continuing to do that.
It's, business is all about the people and relationships, almost day after day after day after day. And when you say they, you kind of maybe take these people for granted, but who are these people? I mean, I looked at it and I go, this is really cool. Some of the people that I recognize and the names that I've had the privilege of working with. But who are some of these people you get to work with at Gladstone? What do they do? Just quickly.
Sure. So Wager, he has a focus, former marketing leader. He does fractional work. He does starting the marketing operations roundtable. Mark Uselis has, a long pedigree of being a marketing strategist. Jen Forrester, who is a BD coach, has significant expertise in social media, LinkedIn, but really is an excellent coach. We've got Bruce Altop, who was a long, standing CMO in the industry, a pioneer with strategic account management, helping firms navigate shifting from a practice area focus. We've got Craig, who is our leader, who kind of also brings his own perspective and really sets the tone. And that was what was so important to me. He creates space for all of us to shine. He creates a platform upon which we can bring the value that we have. And he, helps us shine in a way that he brings out the best in each of us and helps stitch it all together. We've got Elsa, Weiss, who's doing terrific work, working with Briefly, and also providing a strategic fractional support. John Buchanan has joined us recently to provide, public relations, PR and communication support. I'm worried I'm going to forget somebody.
You sound like you're getting an Academy Award.
You like me. You really like me. Yeah, exactly. It's just, and for anyone that I forgot off the top of my head, I apologize. But it's just been outstanding. And I do think that we have a platform that's different, and that attracted me. And I'll continue to, the roundtables are really special. I mean, everyone that I've talked to has the same reaction. And I've been able to build professional relationships with the other participants in a way that other forums don't really allow me to do so.
It's wonderful. It's great. It's very, very cool. It's been a privilege and an honor to have Amy Shepard on There's any number of sound bites and clips I can go back to in my head of what I learned today. If anybody want to get a hold of Amy, it's at Gladstone Growth Strategies. There will be slices of Amy up in various forms of social media that will be available around the internet. And I can look forward to continuing to learn from you in the days ahead, in the use of artificial intelligence and the knowledge you continue to grab by not only surveying firms, but working with them, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, what makes somebody AI literate. So it's been wonderful, Amy.
Oh, the privilege is mine, Kevin. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you and to have this conversation. Every time we have a chance to talk, I walk away feeling energized and excited about what's coming next. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing how you continue to build out Compass, because I think it's really going to be something special that firms are really going to be excited about.
That's great. You have a great day.
Thanks, you too.